since the change of ownership, particularly with X, I would argue that that is actively encouraged in some circumstances, whipping up that hate that is out there.
Sorry, then what's your question?
I'm asking you to comment on that you've said you're doing all these different things to make it not happen, but the fact is it's getting worse. So my argument is whatever you're doing isn't working, and I would question, particularly with X, that since the change of ownership, I think in some circumstances that is actively encouraged and whipped up.
So if you look at the transparency report that we are publishing, so we are publishing our own transparency report, which are global, every 6 months, and we report on, like the amount of content that we would be actioned, under a different set of policies. So I think when you think about 8, it would be captured by, essentially like 3 buckets of policy. So it would be hateful conduct, which is to attack people on the basis of protected categories. So that could be, for instance, ethnicity or gender or sexual orientation or religion, for example. It could be under violent speech. So violent speech, is to, incite, violence against, like a specific person, or having like a violent discourse against this person, for example, or under abuse and harassment, which is to, trying to shame and harass and degrade others. So that's 3 policy, could kind of encapsulate, like hateful behavior. And if you look at our report, these are policy where we have quite high enforcement actions. So we do keep figures about the amount of contact that we would action under this policy, and they are still quite high. It's thousands, if not millions, of content that we would action. We haven't observed like any particular, decreasing or increasing pattern. But in any case, it's also important to keep in mind, what's happening in real life, because this could be related to, like events in real life that these figures tend to evolve. I think in terms of what we are doing as a platform, and I think, this is something that is, like continuing to happen and gradually happening, so there haven't been like much change in that, is that we work on developing our safety response, to this phenomenon. And so notably, we are investing a lot more in, for instance, machine learning and how to work with AI, like to make sure that, we are capturing this content, like before they are even shown to users. So when you act proactively, like this content, like would not even be on the platform. So that's quite important, right? Because then people would not see it. Of course, when you talk about hateful content, it is text, and there is also like a dimension of, what is the context around what people post, and the, like what do they want to say. And so on that, we are relying also like on human agent, to review this content. So what happens is that this content is being surfaced to human reviewer who would be reviewing this content, or it would be on the basis of people's reporting. And so we are trying, like to work on these different sets of our response, to try to remove content more quickly and more efficiently. And that's something that we continue to be committed with. It's like always like difficult for us to read that it's not the experience that you're having, because it means that, we have to continue both communicating about what we are doing, but also that we have to continue improve, and that hopefully, at some time you will have a better experience, and it will reflect more in, the experience that people have on the platform. But it is indeed our objective, to get better on catching this content.
Now, just turn that a little bit further forward. What I would agree with Mark on, I think your tolerance levels is greater than what it used to be. So, as the House, security-wise, we would come to you under your own name, and we would have 95 to 96% of complaints taken down. Now, we are down to 4 to 5%. So either your tolerance levels have changed, which would be the suggestion that I would get from that, or is there something I'm missing? Because that is the difference in which we are having to try and operate with you as a company. So the only thing that's changed is the ownership and the name. what was previously taken down is no longer taken down?
Well, I think what I can speak to is what I was telling you is that we have a set of public policy that are accessible online, where anything that would correspond to violence, speech on the platform, hate on the platform, hateful entity as well, like hateful and violent entity, would be even an account level policy, so we would take account down, on the basis of that. And any form of abuse and harassment, and of course, like with that, we would take into consideration also like coordinated harassment and targeted harassment is something that we don't allow for. So, when we get a user report or law enforcement report, and when we detect it, we take this down. So I think, like we don't internally, what we publish in terms of figure, like we don't see that there is a decrease. Like this is quite consistent, like it's quite stable. I think, we are always happy to review what you observe, and so if you have like any evidence or example that you want to share with us after we committee, we can absolutely have a look and get back to you. But I think, what I wanted to illustrate is that first, safety of our user is very important. Like I said at the beginning, if people don't feel that they're encouraged to participate to the conversation, then they won't express themselves, and this is absolutely not our objective, because the conversation has no value. There is just no interest for us to have a conversation that has no value. And then I think, like I was saying, this is something that we continue to invest on, and there is no objective of the company that people are less safe when they use the service. On the very contrary, we are hoping that people will feel more safe, and that, content is detected and removed more quickly when it has to be removed.
The only thing I would say is, obviously the bar is a lot higher than it used to be. That's the difference.
Very, very, very quickly, have you ever taken down anything that Elon Musk has said?
What's for sure is that the rule of the platform will apply the same way as...
That wasn't what I asked. Sorry, that wasn't... I just asked a very simple question. Have you ever taken down anything that Elon Musk has said?
I don't have information for the committee, but very certainly we did. Like if he crossed the line, like we probably did as any other user, because he's not like...
Wherever the line is.
No, but it's a very serious question that you're asking, so I'm going to answer you like very seriously, which is that there is no user that is above the rule of the platform, even Elon Musk or anyone else.
I'll try that with Ben, and then I'm going to cross to Samantha.
Could I ask what X's definition of hate is? Because I've long since stopped reporting comments that I receive on X. I've received death threats that have been investigated by the police but not removed by the platform. I've had numerous examples of comments that haven't been removed where individuals have been prosecuted in a court of law in this country under the Malicious Communications Act. So is there any correlation between UK law and what X decides to remove from its platform? And I receive quite a lot of abuse. Here's one from this morning. Are you white? No, then you have no say in what goes on in England. In fact, get the fuck out. We don't want immigrants.
Disgusting.
There's one from earlier today. There is nothing wrong with being racist. You need to go back to Africa. Black people aren't worthy of the UK. Leave while we still let you, you grimy coloniser. When are you going to be deported back to your own country? Foreigners should be banned from British politics for British people. You just got owned, Uncle Tom, fuck me, I'm blacker than you. Take the hint and return to your ethnic homelands. You're not British, you will never be British, go home. So I would argue that if I report all of those comments, not one of them would be taken down by X. So what guarantees could you offer me that there can be confidence amongst MPs, and particularly MPs who suffer an enormous amount of racist abuse on your platform, which isn't policed very effectively? What reassurances can you give me that if I report those comments, they'll be removed? And if they aren't removed, what justification would you give as the Government Affairs Director as to why they weren't removed?
Yep. No,
and maybe just an addition to that, even if they're not reported, what filter do you have to identify them? Why should it be the responsibility of the MP?
It's a very good question. Well, first of all, I'm sorry you had this experience, because these comments are absolutely aberrant, so it has no place, obviously, like on the platform. So I think, like in terms of the way we would work, because you did also mention, like the illegality of this comment. And so, when we get a report from law enforcement in the UK, like we have specific team that would have a look at this report, under the locally applicable law, and they would also like take action on the basis of local law, which is, like important, because we any illegal content on the platform by the law, and the law, has to be applied as such. So that's something very
On that, whenever I've reported comments to the police, when they've investigated them, they've submitted an optica request to X, and X has refused to provide the identity of the individuals who've made those comments. So could you also speak to that point as to why you refuse to cooperate with law enforcement?
There are two aspects of this cooperation. So the first one is we answer to different type of requests. The first one is removal requests. So for instance, on a specific comment, if it's illegal, we would remove it, in the specific country because it's illegal in this country. Then we answer to information requests, which is when we cooperate with the police for them, to kind of find the person, and then they can prosecute the person, or they can potentially, prevent for something bad to happen as well.
Don't provide that information. You refuse to.
But so just sorry, let me finish my stream of thoughts. And then there is preservation request, where we can preserve information for the purpose of the investigation that the police is conducting. I think in any of the cases, it's a dialogue, right, with the officer. So I think in some occasion, we might, and I mean, I can't speak to the specific cases, right, because I don't know about them, but I think it's always, the matter of, being able to provide some more context about, for instance, a specific individual that they are investigating on, and, for us to be able to disclose the information, we are in need of evidence. So I think what I'm trying to say is that, sometimes a first report, a first contact, might not be enough, and there is a need for, more context,
what's the threshold for evidence? I've just read a load of tweets there. Yeah. What is your threshold for evidence in order for the police to be given the details of the identity of the individual who's made those comments?
I think it's more about having more context than really having a threshold.
What does that mean?
It's trying to explain about a certain threat, for instance, in real life about a person. I'm just giving you the general example, right? I'm not talking to the
I've asked you a very specific question which you don't seem to be able to answer. What is the threshold for X to be able to provide the information of an individual who has made an illegal, racist comment as a request from the police? Not from an individual, from the police.
Or to put it another way, what is the context that would make those statements acceptable to you?
Well, I think perhaps it would be useful, for us to, check on the specific cases and go back to you with the informed answer. Because if I'm answering to you right now, it's not, it's not an informed answer. So I think it's not even useful for you to have a comment from. Because I'm not working. I'm not this team. It's an expert team inside the company that is working on this comment. So I think that's what we could do.
Very important. It's very concerning because if somehow the law is being broken, you won't give the information to the law agency, the problem. I don't want you to answer now, I think that would be unfair. I'd like you to take away, and if you can inform the questions that you're unable to answer at the moment because you're only generalising, I think would help us going forward. Samantha.
Yeah, I mean, my colleague asked if the owner of your company had any of his comments have ever been taken down. He called one of our colleagues a rape genocide apologist, and that she should be jailed. That led to her safety, which my colleague knows directly about, being extremely compromised. But somehow that isn't a justification for removing that particular message. I find that very difficult to accept, particularly in the context, as Mr. Speaker says, that the bar that is set at which you will come back to us has been raised at least twice because there's no response. I mean, Ben has just described to you what's happened to him today. This must happen every day.
Can I just follow up on that?
You asked for context and you asked for examples. You've been given some examples of particular posts. Would you like to speak to them?
Yeah, no, thank you for this question. And I think this gives you the occasion to explain myself, a bit better, because maybe I was not being clear. What I was saying is that in some situation we might need more context from the police officer, right? I think on the specific cases that you mentioned, I think these cases, again, these are bad comment, right? I think we all agree. I'm not myself part of the safety team, so I think, me giving you an answer, is not going to give you like a very informed answer. So I think on any specific cases, we are happy to review them and to give you like a more specific answer.
So we did that in advance. I don't know if you've seen them, but these were circulated to
a week ago.
You've had them for a week, I think.
Yes, absolutely. On those 4 specific cases, we did prepare for it. So 2 accounts got suspended, 1 content got actioned under a Forstner policy, so it got massively de-amplified on the platform and labeled as a violation of our violent speech policy. And then a third post was in no violation, but on this post that you sent to us, they all, like 3 of them has been clearly.
Can I just ask the question? Were they removed?
Yes, the account got
completely
suspended.
Removed.
Yeah, the account, 2 accounts got suspended, so that's even.
I'm just going to come. Yeah, completely removed. What was the timescale?
Sorry, what was the timescale?
The timescale of you being made aware of it to actually removing them. Was it within hours? Was it within days? Or was it within weeks?
So I think as when we look at it as a team and got supported, it was in a couple of hours. So like just for the time the time for the team to conduct its review of the post. And I think like in some violation, like we can be very quick because it's very straightforward. In some other cases, like we do want to let the time to the agent, like to understand, like what is the situation because they take action. So we can't, have a specific time frame that we are working under. But I think, like what we are really trying to do is to work as fast as possible. We also try to not make mistakes, and that's also why, like in some cases we need to take more time.
Can I just say we've just checked. Actually, one of them we shared with you is still online. So it's not the case it's being taken down.
But I was telling you just right now that one of the posts is in no violation. So 3 have been removed and 1 is just not in violation.
What does it say, the acceptable one, to you? Most David Amos pictures I've seen. Yeah, about Rupert Love. Can you just read it out? Sorry.
He says most David Amos picture I've ever seen.
The most David Amos picture I've ever seen. That's the one you remains up there. So why does it remain up there?
How do you see that to be in a violation?
A violation. So we're back to where the bar lies. How it seems to have gone up rather than down. At one time that would have been removed in my view. I think that's the difference.
Is the implication of that one not that here is someone who should finish up the same way as David Amos did? I mean, that's the conclusion.
He was murdered.
Outrageous. Do you know who David Amos is?
No, look, like the content is a picture of an MP. I don't want to publicly, discuss the case, obviously. And then the comments say he looks alike David Amish, and that's all. There is no further context, So it's just a picture of the MP.
I'm sorry, there is a context.
Then I'm going to come back to Sam.
Our colleague Davis Amos, who was before my time, sadly was killed by someone.
Of course,
and
we know
the
that.
implied context of that post is that this individual is referencing another MP.
Murdered MP.
And referencing the murdered MP. The context is very clear to us as MPs and to the general public. And what we are not understanding is why the platform does not understand the context and will not remove that content.
No, but look, I think, you could see that in different situations. I don't know if you see the post, but it is a picture of an MP.
I have seen the post.
And it could be to say that it physically looked like another MP. It doesn't mean that...
No. Really believe that, do you?
Right. Look, I've also asked you to go away and come back with some of the answers.